Welcome back, everyone. In today's session, we're diving into one of the most important pillars of good clinical practice, protecting human rights in clinical research. Because no matter how advanced our science gets, no matter how innovative the protocol or promising the drug, if we forget to protect the people in our studies, we've missed the point entirely. So today, we'll focus on four critical elements: the protection of human subjects and the informed consent process, including the key requirements of the Informed Consent Form, or ICF, protecting vulnerable populations, and ensuring privacy and confidentiality throughout the entire trial process. Let's get started. First, let's pause for a moment and think about who clinical trials are really for. Yes, we're testing medicines, devices, or interventions. But at the heart of every clinical study is a human being, a person who may be sick, vulnerable, or simply willing to help advance science. Protecting them isn't just a legal requirement, it's a moral one. It's the foundation on which all ethical research stands. That's why the ICH GCP guidelines, along with decades of international ethics codes, place the rights, safety, and well-being of the trial participants above all else. Let's unpack that. Rights. Every participant has the right to choose whether or not to be part of a study. They have the right to know the purpose, the risks, the potential benefits, and their alternatives. They have the right to ask questions, to say no, and to withdraw at any time without penalty or judgment. Safety. Every effort must be made to minimize harm. This means preclinical safety data must be reviewed, investigational products must be closely monitored, and all adverse events must be tracked and reported in a timely manner. Well-being. This is broader than just physical safety. It includes emotional and psychological health. It means treating participants with dignity. It means not overburdening them. And it means providing support if something goes wrong. Now here's a critical point for investigators, sponsors, and medical teams alike. The duty to protect doesn't begin after enrollment. It begins before the study even starts, with protocol design, with feasibility assessments, and with the informed consent process, which brings us to the second part of today's session. We've all seen consent forms that are 20 pages long, packed with medical jargon, and written in a way that only a regulatory lawyer could understand. But here's the truth. Informed consent is not a document. It's a process of communication, of transparency, of mutual respect. And yes, the Informed Consent Form, ICF, is a crucial part of that process, but the form is just the starting point. Let's go over what makes an informed consent process truly valid, ethical, and compliant. Voluntary participation. Participation must be completely voluntary. That means no pressure from physicians, no implied promises of better care, no subtle threats of losing treatment if they don't join. People must feel free to say yes or no. Clear and understandable language. The ICF must be written in language that the participant can understand. That means avoiding complex medical terms, legal language, and vague statements. Ask yourself, would my grandmother understand this? If not, it needs to be rewritten. Required elements of an ICF. Here's what an informed consent form must include, according to ICH GCP and most regulatory bodies. The purpose of the study. The procedures involved and which are experimental. The expected duration of participation. The potential risks and discomforts. The potential benefits to the participant or to others. Alternative treatments available, if any. How confidentiality will be maintained. Whether compensation or treatment is available in case of injury. Who to contact for questions about the study or participant rights. A clear statement that participation is voluntary and can be withdrawn at any time. Every one of these points is non-negotiable. They must be discussed, not just handed over in a form, and understood. Ongoing process. Informed consent isn't a one-time checkbox. It should be ongoing. If the protocol changes, if new safety data emerges, or if the risk-benefit profile shifts, participants must be informed and reconsented. This is especially important in long-term studies or those involving evolving technologies. Special populations. Extra protections must be in place for vulnerable populations. Children, people with cognitive impairments, patients in emergency situations, economically or educationally disadvantaged groups. In these cases, consent may involve legal representatives, but the goal remains the same: to respect autonomy and dignity as much as possible. So, why does all this matter? Because every data point we collect, every analysis we publish, every regulatory decision we influence starts with a human subject who trusted us enough to say yes. And that trust is sacred. If we compromise that, we compromise the science, we compromise ethics, and we compromise our credibility as researchers, clinicians, and professionals. So, whether you're an investigator obtaining consent at the site, or a medical affairs colleague designing a study, or engaging a KOL, this is your responsibility too. Protect their rights, prioritize their safety, honor their trust. Because human rights in research are not just part of the checklist, they are the heart of what we do. Now let me ask you something. When we say someone is vulnerable, what do we mean? In clinical research, vulnerable populations are groups of individuals who may have limited capacity to protect their own interests or make fully informed decisions about participation. This could include children and adolescents, people with cognitive impairments, the elderly prisoners, refugees or displaced persons, individuals with economic or educational disadvantages, patients in emergency or critical care settings. Now here's the key point. Being vulnerable doesn't mean they shouldn't participate in research. It just means they need additional protections. And we, as research professionals, have a heightened responsibility. Let's take children, for example. They can't legally consent for themselves. So parental or guardian consent is required, but that doesn't mean the child's opinion is ignored. We use what's called assent, age-appropriate explanations and verbal agreement from the child whenever possible. Or think about someone in an emergency situation. Maybe they're unconscious or in severe pain. Can they really understand a 15-page consent form at that moment? Of course not. That's why ethical guidelines stress that consent must be obtained when capacity is restored or through a legally authorized representative, and only if the research can't be done without including this population. And here's where things often go wrong in practice. Sometimes investigators feel rushed. Sometimes the protocol lacks clarity. Sometimes sponsors don't provide enough training on these nuances. But none of that changes our responsibility. For vulnerable participants, your awareness is the safeguard. Your words are the protection. So whenever you're designing or conducting a trial involving vulnerable populations, ask yourself, have we truly minimized risk? Have we clearly justified the inclusion of this population? Have we involved ethics committees early and transparently? And have we taken every possible step to empower, not just protect, these individuals? Because in research, real protection is not about saying no. It's about saying yes, but with care, dignity, and accountability. Now let's shift to something that affects every single participant, no matter their age, condition, or geography: privacy and confidentiality. You might be thinking, okay, I get it. We de-identify the data, we use subject codes, and we lock the files. That's privacy, right? Yes, but that's just the surface. Let's dig deeper. Privacy refers to a person's right to control access to their body, behaviors, and personal life. Confidentiality, on the other hand, is about protecting the data they've shared with us from misuse, from leaks, from being seen or shared without proper authorization. And in today's world of electronic data capture, remote monitoring, e-source, wearables, and even AI, keeping information private is more complex and more important than ever before. Let me give you a few practical examples. You're in a site visit, and the subject's medical history is on the screen. Is the screen visible to others in the room? You're on a Zoom call discussing a protocol deviation. Did you accidentally share the subject ID or initials? A colleague sends a report over email. Does it contain protected health information? Is it encrypted? These are everyday scenarios, and each one is a moment where trust can be either protected or broken. Now here's what GCP and most data protection laws, like GDPR in Europe or HIPAA in the US, tell us. Checkmark data must be coded or anonymized wherever possible. Access should be restricted. Only people with a legitimate reason should view it. Participants must be told how their data will be used, stored, and shared, right in the consent form. And they must have the right to withdraw consent, ask for corrections, or even request deletion of their data, depending on jurisdiction. Remember, clinical trial participants aren't just subjects, they're people. People who've trusted us with deeply personal information, sometimes during the most vulnerable periods of their lives. That's not just a data management issue, that's a moral obligation. So, whether you're an investigator managing source documents, a medical affairs colleague reviewing safety data, or a sponsor overseeing data flow, your role is to keep that information secure, private, and respected, every step of the way. So, let's pause and recap on the section. Vulnerable populations require more than just standard procedure. They need extra safeguards, empathy, and ethical foresight. Privacy and confidentiality are not optional. They're essential to trust, compliance, and the very legitimacy of your trial. Together, these two pillars reinforce a deeper truth. Human research is not just about science. It's about respect. It's about dignity. It's about showing up every day with the awareness that behind every data point, there's a human being who trusted you with their story. Thanks for joining me in this session. In our next tutorial, we'll explore another essential piece of the GCP puzzle: the roles and responsibilities of investigators and sponsors. Until then, keep protecting that trust. It's the most valuable data we'll ever collect.